Morning, folks. So, I'm going to title this one, Don't Watch Rebel News. um, so, Trudeau's disinformation chief apparently went on, well, you can see it from the link if you watch that link I posted. I only got about halfway through that story from Rebel News. But, yeah, Trudeau's disinformation czar, as Ezra calls him. I'm not sure what his actual title is and don't really care. But apparently he went on CTV News to talk about misinformation groups in Canada and called Rebel News the worst. Yeah. If someone from Trudeau's government goes on television and tells you you shouldn't trust somebody, you should immediately go and have a look at whoever's content that is. I honestly don't know what they were thinking. The Streisand effect is a real thing. And anyone with a lick of sense in this country already knows that CTV is a subverted organization. It's essentially one of the vast propaganda arms. Or, yeah, that's fair. I think we could rephrase that to one of the web of propagandist organizations that Trudeau has subverted using government funding, using your money. Yeah. The idea that we have to promote Canadian content is one thing. It's quite another to turn around and see that they're actively attempting to silence a Canadian news outlet. What's really funny is that the video that I've linked, Ezra talks about how Rebel News is under attack. That's fairly common marketing ploy. It's not a bad one, and it's not necessarily untrue, especially when the actual government of the country you operate in is after you, and has been after you for some time. The really funny thing was that Maxime Bernier is on the same list as a Russian agent. In fact, anyone who promotes specific mistrust in Trudeau's government is considered a Russian agent. До свидания, comrades. Oh, fuck. Yeah, apparently I'm a Russian agent now. Yeah. I'll happily continue not being paid in rubles to tell people that they shouldn't trust Trudeau. And cite specific examples like, say, the misinformation Trudeau's office put out about their use of or their authorization or their justification for using the Emergencies Act. Yeah. Or, you know, how Trudeau promised to create election reform and then discovered that if he did that, he wouldn't get elected again. 32% is not a majority. Yeah. Sorry, Justin. You know, I make a lot of the same jokes a lot of people do about him being Castro's kid and stuff like that. There's no confirmation for it. Fine. It's just a meme. But I suspect that's going to be the next thing that Trudeau is going to want to try to suppress. And why you would bother is beyond me. If it was me, I'd lean into this the same way I just leaned into the whole Russian agent thing. It's just a joke. Who cares? There are way bigger things to worry about. But yeah. But yeah, apparently that makes me a Russian agent. Which is interesting because that makes Maxime Bernier a Russian agent by the same logic. And by the same logic, then Rebel News would also be Russian agents. But both of those individuals, and possibly myself, I haven't seen the whole list. I doubt I'm that high profile. It would be nice, but yeah, it is what it is. But those same Russian agents are listed as the most U.S. influenced, or among the most U.S. influenced individuals or organizations or entities, whatever term they used, in Canada. So, Russian agent and U.S. influenced. Does that make Joe Biden a Russian agent? Like, seriously. This stuff is crazy. It's like they jump from bullshit to bullshit without keeping track of the earlier bullshit. And what? It's, if it wasn't so fucking dystopian and nightmarish, it would be funny. Unfortunately, it is very dystopian. As much as I talk about being trans-Texan and all that sort of stuff, I mean, I'm encouraged when I see things like Danielle Smith come out and say that Alberta will have nothing to do with the WEF from now on. That's good news. But you also have a prime minister who conveniently develops COVID symptoms while fully vaccinated and boosted, mind you, and other reports notwithstanding. But he develops it at the most convenient times for him. Like when a crowd of truckers roll into town and go, look, we just want to talk. They're truckers, you know. These are your citizens, Trudeau, that you claimed to be Nazis and I think white supremacists, racists. Yeah, so you play the same game that every other leftist plays. Everyone I don't like is literally Hitler. Why on God's green earth would you think that was a good idea? Do you think public opinion is against the truckers? We've got some news for you, pal. Right? These same truckers who only months before were being hailed as heroes because they were keeping the economy going in the middle of a pandemic are suddenly told, no, you're bastards. We don't want your kind here. But the really, really disheartening thing about this for me is how he'll go and, or his government rather, not him personally, I'm sure. He's far too important for things like that. But his government will go and apply to a court to have a lawsuit that's been brought against them dismissed on the grounds of mootness, when the issue is not transitory. The issue with these lawsuits was not, oh, you had us all locked down and we want the lockdown to stop. That was the trucker protest. The point of the lawsuit was to bring to people's attention and most likely to have some sort of penalty levied against the Trudeau government's actions when it came to the travel vaccine mandate. They've been flaunting or flouting or flailing, I don't really know what term would be accurate here, but they've been acting against the interests of Canadians and against the rights of Canadians by saying, you're not allowed to travel because you won't take this jab. Yeah, and now a fucking pile of us are vindicated. I feel vindicated by the Pfizer CEO coming out and saying, when she was asked, or her reaction when she was asked, did you test for transmissibility prevention? Her response was, and I quote, no. Essentially. But she laughed at the idea that they could have had time to do this sort of test. Well, yeah, and a bunch of us went, that's really quick for a vaccine to be tested, because we were the test population. I was in the control group. You're welcome. Didn't even have to sign a contract for that one. So now the science has changed again, except it didn't. Science works in a specific manner every single time. And the idea that this vaccine could have ever, or these vaccines-ish, I still have issues with the fact that the definition was changed, but all of this, taken in total, shows us that the government was just acting on optics. They just want to maintain control. They won't have that much power because they've basically impoverished the whole country with their policies. And they're going to end up in a situation where people are going to look at what's been done and they're going to say, that doesn't seem right. And now what's going on is the people who look up and say, hey, that doesn't seem right, are being told they're Russian agents. Am I supposed to be being paid for being this Russian agent? Because, you know, it'd be nice. Yeah. But speaking of payments, I mean, look at the CERB. What was it? Canadian earnings. I forget what it was anyway. What the acronym stood for. But these payments came out of the public pot, and I mean, what's going to replace it? Carbon taxes? People already can't afford to drive. So adding greater cost to gasoline and diesel is kind of pointless. But then the carbon tax is applied to home heating fuel. Mr. Trudeau, you may not be aware of it because you live free, essentially, from the taxpayer, leaving aside any other income streams you may have. And you also come from money because your father lived tax-free on the government dime, on the people's paycheck, as it were. And yeah, you come from privilege, and you have no ability, which it's perfectly natural not to, but you have no ability whatsoever to understand the plight of the common man, let's say. You have never known the difficulty, the stress that comes with having to decide between, can I afford all the food I want this month? Or do I have to scrounge and save for my cell phone bill, my electric bill, my heat bill, my water bill? Which, I'll be honest, was something I never knew was a thing until I moved away from Newfoundland. But this is, how to put it? Trudeau has a sort of disability when it comes to having been so insulated from the concerns of the average person for his entire life that he can't understand why people who don't spend tens of thousands of dollars a month on food are mad. Because he's out of touch. It's as simple as that. And when someone comes from that kind of privilege, from that kind of from a position of that kind of I can't even think of the term because it's something that's so alien to me. I'm a poor, and in the same way, I can't really put myself in his position. I'd love to be able to say, yeah, I can go and drop $1,000 on a meal at a whim. That isn't going to happen. Probably never happen for me. But at the same time, no one else is paying my bills. I bust my ass as much as I can, and not terribly effectively. I scrape by each month, and that's about it. But I'm trying not to let myself get depressed over that. But then you see someone like Trudeau with all that privilege who just doesn't get it. Not everyone was raised the way you were. Not everyone was raised the way I was. One of the big benefits I had from leaving Newfoundland was that I got to talk to people from other places. And one of my very good friends who was native, we were discussing the way we grew up. Now, he grew up in Winnipeg, which is a very big city. I didn't. I grew up in a tiny outport village in Newfoundland. There wasn't a lot of luxury. My folks did their best. But the basics came first, obviously. For him, it was not unusual. His average day as a kid was getting up, and he was probably 5-6 years younger than me. So his average day when he got up was to get up, get something to eat, whatever it was, and I mean, more or less the same. But then he's out in a big city exploring, whereas I was out in the woods. He grew up eating McDonald's and lots of canned foods and things like that. And I did too. Like, McDonald's for me when I was a kid was a treat. There was never a McDonald's in my hometown until I was in my college years. And by that time I was already moving around anyway. But when we talked about the things that we did as children, fishing, hunting, just hiking through the woods, these were alien to him, and he was native. And he pointed out to me that I was raised more native than he was, which was really weird. And we both got quite the laugh out of it, because here he is, a city boy, and here I am, the rural Newfoundlander, and I'm white, and he's native. But when you look at our lives, those terms could be switched quite easily, simply on the basis of how we were raised. And Trudeau simply doesn't have, well, he's never ever dealt with common people except from a place of inequality. He's never been equal to pretty much any of the people he's talked to in his own country. He's far and above in terms of the privileges and the gentleness of his upbringing than someone like me. And then to turn around and attack, and I'm not going to phrase it any other way, he did attack his people. But of course, he doesn't view us as his people. He said in an interview years before he was elected that he believed that Quebecers were better than everyone else in Canada. But then, after he's elected, an older lady, clearly Quebecois from her accent, in Quebec during an event, she started complaining about all the immigration. And he called her racist for it. Well, of course he would, because he doesn't understand the struggles of the common people, the common folk, the salt of the earth, whatever you want to call us. And having that attitude really just shows that he's handicapped by his upbringing and his privilege. It's a blind spot that he shouldn't have as a representative of the people. Excuse me. And again. But when you are that far out of touch that the people you are meant to serve mean so little to you that you can dismiss them and their concerns as racist, white supremacist, when their opinions become unacceptable views. Yeah, I run a YouTube channel. Trust me, there's no such thing as an unacceptable view. different arena, of course. But of course, I promote specific mistrust in Trudeau. I promote general mistrust in politicians anyway. No one should trust a politician. That's why we have to have things like a free press, free speech, free expression, whatever term you want to use. We have to have these rights in order to keep our government in check. Now, of course, I think the Charter of Rights and Freedoms didn't go far enough. Mr. Peckford, I do apologize. I know you were part of the process. But really, we should have had something akin to the U.S. Second Amendment in Canada. We should have had, especially after dealing with Trudeau and his initial invocation of the War Measures Act. Yes, it was a genuine emergency, but just because the FLQ doesn't exist anymore doesn't mean there aren't threats to the individual and to the country that don't require good men to have the ability to bear arms. As the expression in the US goes, the best solution to a bad man with a gun is a good man with a gun. And it's been borne out over and over and over again. But if you were to suggest to Trudeau that the reason the US has a Second Amendment and the reason Canada should have a Second Amendment, or something akin to it, is because governments can become tyrannical, Trudeau's going to laugh at you and say there's no chance that's ever going to happen. Or he'll think it. He might not say it. He's a little more polished than that. But if you brought that idea up to Trudeau, the first thing in that man's head, and I guarantee this, would be, oh fuck no, they'll shoot me. The reason he thinks that is clear from the words he's used before. He has said that he admires China's basic dictatorship. He said that on camera to a room full of people he'd never met before. When someone tells you what kind of person they are, you should listen. Yeah. So, this is your friendly neighborhood Russian agent. Look, I'm from Newfoundland. I like my potatoes just as much as anyone else does. I just don't turn them into vodka. Anyway, I hope you're all having a good day. This has been one hell of a ramble I didn't mean to make, but this one will be posted on Friday. As I say, I hope you're all having a good day. Oh, before I go, I want to tell one of my subs, congratulations, and I hope everything is well with you. For those of you who don't know, Violence's Life had her baby boy by C-section a couple of months early, and he's currently, as far as I know, still in the NICU. I hope everything goes very, very well for him and for the mother. The whole family, really. But I genuinely wish for your well-being. If you guys want to throw a comment or congratulations or whatever ever her way, I'm sure you could tag her in my comments. You could go over to her channel and tell her congratulations there. It's Violence is Life, which, yeah, it's a good slogan for anybody. In any case, for everyone else, and for Violence and the new boy, I hope all is well. I hope you continue to do well, and rise again until lambs become lions. Bye-bye.